And I will share PowerPoint. And let me turn that into slideshow. And we're ready to begin. Hello, everyone. My name is Tim Selden. I'm the president of the Montessori Foundation, and this is Finding the Perfect Match, our weekly presentation from the Montessori Foundation, designed for Montessori and non-Montessori schools to help you recruit the ideal families and to hang on to them. So it's find and hang on to your perfect match. Our topic this week is something near and dear to my heart, which is why families leave and how parent education changes everything. The challenge with that is it's an oxymoron because parents don't come out to parent ed anymore. They also don't want to be educated because they already have a medical degree, a lawyer's degree, whatever. They resent it more than ever. Today's parent is more likely to get their education from Pinterest or from Facebook or from Instagram, or they want it in really quick bites, which, by the way, is what led us to create the Montessori Family Alliance years ago in an attempt to try to provide you with additional support. So if you're a Montessori school and you're already a member of what some people would say Tomorrow's Child, they say, I subscribe to Tomorrow's Child. It's been an organization for the last 6 years called the Montessori Family Alliance. And what we're trying to do is to create an international community of parents who feel like they are part of something bigger and that they have an organization they can turn to when they don't know what to do. Now, in a typical day, the Montessori Foundation gets about 300 phone calls from parents across North America asking us, should they stay? Should they go? Why doesn't the school serve their kids hot lunch? Whatever. They got all kinds of questions. And what we try to do is to work on your behalf to help parents to understand that if it's working, don't fix it. You don't need to go find another school because it's imperfect. And, you don't have to. I mean, there's a reason why people like us spend our lives sending our kids to Montessori schools and paying more than we pay for a mortgage. So part of what we're here to do is to help. And one of the things that we've done differently, thanks to my friend Clint Lausch, is he taught me how to integrate my friend Abigail, my trained AI, into the Montessori Family Alliance so that if you were a parent, and we can easily set you up with a free account so you can see for yourself. But if you're at 3 in the morning, you can't sleep, your kid won't go to sleep, and you need help, you can talk to Abigail, and it's like talking to me. Now, not that you want your parents talking to me, but probably better than talking to each other. The bottom line is we're here to help them to understand why their baby is teething and what to do about it, how to get their child to eat spinach, how Montessori curriculum works, what are the best books to read. We have a great library of videos and articles and books and all kinds of things that are in there. And I just highly recommend the Montessori Family Alliance. If you've never looked at it, please take a look for yourself. We're happy to provide you again with a free membership. And if you don't love it, great. But I think you're going to love it, and you just don't know what it is yet. And it does come with Tomorrow's Child magazine and lots more. We're going to be doing free town hall forums for parents, by the way, at night throughout the North American hemisphere. We'll be doing all kinds of things. And starting in July, we'll be sending out a weekly newsletter to parents with all kinds of stuff. We're going to be helping them with what to do this summer and how to get ready for school and just all kinds of things that go beyond anything we've ever done before. So again, this week's topic is sort of parent education in the 21st century. What do you do? And this is not intended to be a lecture because I think we all have a piece of the truth. You know, and I know parents don't come out. They don't want to sit in those little chairs. They don't like coming to your turf and having your teacher lecture them about how to raise their kid. I've had so many parents say, I've got a PhD, I'm a professor of education, I'm listening to a 25-year-old or a 50-year-old who never went to college or who's earning a quarter of what I earn, tell me how to raise my kids. Come on. And so, what we're trying to do is create partnership and conversation. And it's hard. It's really hard to get them out at night. They'd rather watch, Seinfeld, reruns or something on Netflix or anything other than come to your campus at night, get a babysitter, have to get their kid to sleep at 9 o'clock at night after they've driven home from years. You know what goes on. So unless there's wine and cheese or cocktails are better, um, or lots of good food, or their kids on stage performing, they don't want to go out at night. And so it's harder and harder and harder. I just got off the phone with a friend of mine who has four schools in California. She's very well known, and she is facing a bleed off of her 5 and her 4-year-olds. And again, she's asking me, how can I keep parents in today's world with more and more publicly funded options, more and more private schools that are going down and saying, not only do we start at kindergarten, now we have a 4-year-old program, now we have a 3-year-old program. It's harder and harder to recruit and retain the right families, which is what we're going to talk about today. So there is a silent exodus. When parents come to you, they are filled with enthusiasm and hope. You're a bright, shiny penny. The families you've let in now who are going to start with you in August or September, they are probably very, very excited, although they will go through ups and downs throughout the summer as their kid begins to want to know, is it school yet? Or is school going to be okay? Will my kid have friends? And, will he come home with poop in his pants? Or all the different things that can happen in the real world with real children. You may be taking in kids in your middle school, in your high school. You may have elementary kids. The bottom line is, I don't care what age these kids are, their parents over the next 3 months, that's the beginning of the time when you need to form the marriage, when you have to form the relationship. Your existing families who re-enrolled, hopefully they are so bonded to you that they will do anything it takes. They want to know, what can I do to help? On the other hand, they're probably asking themselves, what the heck? Are we stupid? We just agreed to pay $15,000 a year more, 25,000. I mean, my alma mater, Barry, it would cost you $45,000 to send your toddler to school. So I don't care where you are in the country, unless you're in Canada and your province is subsidizing elementary age education and beyond, there's a good chance your parents are saying, why am I doing this? Not only is this Montessori weird, and my mother-in-law is saying, are the grandkids still going to that weird school? But you and your spouse are having deep conversations about, how are we going to ever pay that tuition payment? So we have to find a way to really work. And Montessori draws families for idealism, but they start to unravel pretty quickly, even over the summer before the first year begins, no less, in the summer in between one school year and the next school year, which, by the way, is why you get those Dear John letters. I guess it'd be Dear Sharon letter, that says something like, in July, we're so sorry, but we're not going to be able to send Sharon Jr. back to your school next year. She's been accepted to Snate Academy, or, we thought about it and we just, we're worried about, the government shutdown and the craziness in the world and the war in Iran and the price of gasoline. And we just can't do it. We can't afford. We had to admit it. We're sorry. We're not going to be there. And you're trying to figure out, do I call my lawyer? Do I cry? I mean, what do I do? And so that's what this is all about, is how can you minimize the chance that happens? It's going to happen. Trust me, it will happen. It just doesn't have to happen with 80% of your population. So what we're trying to do is, every time you prevent one child from leaving, you have saved the world. We have a saying that a Montessori child can never be replaced because when they leave, they go with two friends. And the whole goal, I mean, I grew up in Montessori. It started when I was a toddler. I went through the 12th grade. And I got to tell you, every single year from about fourth grade on, I was asking my mom, can I go to another school? And my mom was the owner of the school. It was really tough. I mean, I almost left in my junior year. So the bottom line is we're trying to minimize this. The real cost of tuition is that it not only affects your income, but it affects the quality of the program your teachers are able to provide in the classroom. Our classrooms need the third year leaders. They also need the second year leaders, and they need the cohort of rising children who are going from primary into the beginning of lower elementary. I mean, at every age level, it matters. I ended up graduating from Barry in 1963. The year before, I had 18 kids in my class. The year I graduated, there were two of us left. In 1 year, we lost all those kids. They all went elsewhere because they were afraid that Barry wouldn't be good enough. And Barry was a pretty glitzy country club kind of school. So what I'm describing has happened at some of the most famous Montessori schools in the world. And what we want to do is we're trying to put the odds on our side. Everything we do is an investment. And understanding the impact, and by the way, I've overlaid the word strategy. So it's supposed to say retention investment strategies. So every time you find a way to minimize a family leaving, you have made an investment and a strategy was in play. And the idea is that you can't do this the way most men cook, which is just sort of throwing stuff together. You got to have a plan. You got to follow a recipe because some years you are on the top of your game, and other years you are exhausted. I just got off the phone with one of my dear friends who has a school here in Maryland by the name of Tammy. And Tammy had back surgery in March, and it's not working well, and she is feeling like the cat drug her in. She's going to have more surgery on Thursday. And what she's saying to me is, I haven't done anything. I am so far behind. And so my point is, you need a plan, you need a support system. You have to do things like clockwork according to a system. Montessori in the classroom works so well, not only because it's brilliant, and it is brilliant, but because Dr. Montessori was a system engineer in addition to everything else. So she was a shrink, professor of psychiatry. She was a brilliant educator, and she was a master showwoman. But the bottom line is she understood that everything had to be systematized. There had to be a plan. There are rules that we have forgotten, what they're called the Ten Commandments of the Montessori classroom, and the rules of the Children's House, which, by the way, we don't follow anymore. So one of the things I always recommend to us as Montessori school leaders is go back to the basics. You may not feel that it's within your power to go back to the basics. However, I would suggest to you that it's worth at least knowing what the basics are. For example, the rules of the Children's House included you will show up on time, period. You want to be here, you have to show your commitment by being here on time. Number two, your kid will be clean. Your kid will not be sick. If your kid's sick, he needs to stay home. It's not fair to the other children for you to bring him in sick. You need to come in every month and meet with the teachers. I mean, how many of us do that anymore? We plead with them to come in and they say, I don't think so. And so, again, on so many levels, we're not setting up what I would call a covenant with parents, an agreement from the time before we get married. Because if you think back to the days when you were dating, if you built a strong family, you and your partner made a set of commitments to each other. This is how we're going to raise our kids. This is what we're going to do to take care of each other. And look, anything living is trouble. Anything living takes work. Marriage is not easy. Running a school is hard. Being a mother is hard. Being a wife is hard. Being a husband is hard. Being a sister is hard. It takes work to do this stuff. But if we don't know what we're committing to and enter into serious agreements with ourselves and the people we're involved with, it's probably not going to work out as well as we want. People are going to drift away. And so that's part of what I'm talking about is our plan has to be a serious investment of time, energy, and resource. And it has to be an organized, systematic plan. And by the way, I don't think there's one plan. Don't get me wrong. I don't think my vision is the one vision. I think there's multiple communities that have different cultures. What you need is a plan that works for you with your families. However, the people who are drawn to you today may not be the right people. I have a saying that's very, very irreverent, very impolite. I'm going to say it anyway. We've been dating all the wrong people. We've got parents that come to us and they would love you if you just weren't so Montessori. They would love you if you were free. They would love you if you were more like Snate Prep. And so it's not that they're wrong and you're not going to change them. They're going to do what they want to do. But what we can do is recognize that it's not our job to convert people into card carrying Montessori groupies. It's our job to find the right fit for their family and our school. And if we don't find the right fit for their family, they go away probably not angry, but they don't go away with the feeling that Montessori was great up through high school. In fact, that's one of my tests is I can tell how strong your school is by how much you're being nagged to add on more grades because the families want it. That doesn't mean you have to do it. But the bottom line is that pressure is normal and has been normal from the beginning of the Montessori movement and is true in other schools too, Jewish day schools, Catholic schools, Sikh schools, all kinds of schools experience that same phenomena when they're doing the job really, really well. Families want you to keep serving their family long term. Hi, Helena. How are you? Good to see you. So, carrying on forward. By the way, it's my friend Helena in Provence. How's the weather in Provence, Helena? Always good to see our international community.
So
Uh,
sorry, I am in the car. I will just have a here, but I am driving right now.
don't worry. All right. So, what we're talking about is, of course, how do you hang on to the right people and how do you find the right people? By the way, Helena has just started working with Foundation in our what we call the Enrollment Growth Accelerator Program, our marketing program, which is our response to Nido marketing, which is sort of our unique way of helping you to figure out who would be the perfect people to take to the dance. And how do you say no when they're not the right fit without feeling guilty? Because we all fall in love with kittens, small puppies, and children, right? We love the kids, but not every parent needs to be in our school. The kids are great, but with every kid comes mom, dad, grandpa, two moms, two dads, who cares? A duck. I mean, my daughter is gay, and I remember when she came out, she said, "I'm gay," and I said, "I knew that a long time ago." And she said, "Well, will you love me?" I said, "I don't care. Love is hard to find. I don't care if you marry a goose, long as you're happy, kid." So the bottom line is what we try to do in Montessori is create family and love people for who they are. But not everyone needs to be our partner. So what do parents see? When we look at the picture that's on the screen, to us, it looks great. To another parent, it looks crazy making. They can't understand how can this possibly educate their kid and prepare them for the real world. And we know that the more they know about Montessori, the more likely they are to appreciate it. But they don't want to invest the time to figure it out. And so we got to figure out how do we get their attention in an age when they are very, very busy. There are so many things to do, whether it's going to the grocery store and buying tonight's dinner, or investing in the stock market, or scrolling, doom scrolling through Instagram, which is more likely what they're doing a lot. So in our world, Montessori is simple. I mean, to me, it shouldn't be that hard, but in their minds, it's very confusing, or at least for a lot of them, unless they're groupies. And if they're groupies, they probably think they know it all, and you're not doing real Montessori. So, what we're trying to do is, again, get through their defense barriers. So, in the mind of a parent, Montessori looks like run amok. You can do whatever you want. Maybe you'll learn to read, maybe you won't. Or it looks so academic and they'll never have a childhood. All these kids, they never laugh, they never play. All they do is work, work, work. All we do is talk about work. What work did you do today? So what we're trying to do is help them to sort it out in their hearts and in their minds, and they don't really want to work that hard to do that. So there is a learning journey. So, for example, you and I both know that if we lose a teacher tomorrow and we send someone to training, it takes them what, a year, 2 years? I would say 5 years after training before they actually figure it out. So there's a real problem when we've got someone who is on that initial journey. And then the other issue is after they've got their diploma, they think they know it all. And they believe, I already have my diploma. I know. My trainer said this, or my trainer didn't tell me to do it that way. So what we're trying to do is create a professional learning community of kindness, openness, humility, where we're not doing the game of my diploma is better than your diploma. Or my training center, or my trainer's better than your trainer. Because even with AMI and AMS or IMC, you can get into games. So what we're trying to do is just get people to accept we're all in this together. We've got people that haven't even started their training yet, and they're real people too, and they're affecting the kids. The person serving lunch in the lunchroom is affecting the kids. The bus drivers, the phys ed teacher, the art teacher, the Spanish, every single person, the person in the front office who answers the phone, every single person in our school is part of the community, part of the culture of the school. So we have a journey that takes many years. And we've got, we start our training, our parents come in, they begin the orientation. Ideally, after the first 90 days of school, they're beginning to get with the program. They're feeling like they know people. They feel safe. They feel respected. They feel like they know who to talk to when they're confused. So what we're trying to do is help them up that learning journey. So the most important thing you can possibly do is to build empowerment and trust and communication. We want these people to feel like they're part of a family. Now, not everyone who comes into your school wants to be part of your family. They're trying to figure it out because when they first applied to you, there's a pretty good chance they were just trying to find a solution to a problem. They needed someone to watch their kids so they could go to Pilates, or they needed childcare during the day, or the kid was driving them crazy. They needed to be with other kids. From their point of view, they didn't sign on to be a Montessori groupie. They simply were looking for a school, and they chose from a lot of schools. They chose the one where, one, you answer the phone quickly. That matters a lot. Don't use answering machines. Notice the pregnant pause. People today hate answering machines. And because their worst nightmare is their husband's been in a car accident. They've got to get through to you quickly to let you know that you're on the way to the hospital and you're going to be late. And they need to know that they've quickly gotten through, or they want to know, is my kid okay? And so they want instant response from a real human being. And they only want to talk to you when they want to talk to you. Because when they don't want to talk to you, they would rather ignore you, which is why they don't read their email. Partially because they get 300 emails a day, probably more than that. And partially because in their mind, whatever you're trying to say to them isn't that important. And so every parent's different. There are parents that eat out of our hands and they want to know more and more and more. And so just as we follow the child in the Montessori classroom, we have to follow the parent. Every parent is a universe of one. And some of them are exactly what we have in mind. So what we're trying to do is create a culture of trust and belonging. Now, we have a challenge. There's a good chance that you got a group of teachers who love the kids but wish the parents would go away. Any of you find that to be true? The parents make them feel guilty, or they don't read their email, or they want to know, why their kid isn't reading already at the age of 3. And so we have a challenge that the parents know, or they think the teachers don't like them, or the parents think that the teachers really like them a lot and they like them more than they like you. So it's the teacher and them against you. And so any way you look at it, it tends to get gamey. And what we're trying to do is eliminate games, and we want our incoming parents to feel like they are part of a family, and families have rules. So again, not every parent starts off wanting to fall in love. They were just there to pay a lot of money for a service. So when we communicate really well in a way that they hear and appreciate and like, they're happy. And when they're not, they usually perceive it as either silence, this school doesn't communicate with me, these teachers don't let me know what's going on. And in that silence, parents tend to drift away. And so one of the challenges is your teachers are probably feeling like they don't have the time in the day to communicate with 25 to 30 different families. No less the parents who are getting a divorce, and you have to communicate with both parents separately because they don't want to be on the same email thread. Any way you look at it, communication takes time, effort, and energy. And if you don't say it right, they come into your office saying your teacher can't even spell correctly, or your teacher has insulted me, or I don't understand what your teacher's trying to say. What do you mean my kid's on the spectrum? I love a story. There was a school in our area in Washington, uh, run by a woman named Ann Riley, and Ann one day got a mother in her office saying, "I'm a public school teacher. I teach 5th grade. My 4-year-old's teacher tells me my son reads at a 2nd grade level. With all due respect, if that's true, I am really missing something because I don't see any evidence that my son can read at all. He is an emergent reader, but he's not reading. So can you please find out what the heck is going on with your teacher?" So the teacher was a guy who had just graduated from the Washington Montessori Institute. And she sat him down after the parent was gone and said something like, "Bruce, did you tell Mrs. McGuffey that her son was reading at the 2nd grade level?" And he said, "Yeah, I think I did." And she said, "Well, why would you do that?" "Well, I mean, I don't know." And she said, "I mean, do you know what a 2nd grade reader looks like?" I said, "Well, not really." So why did you do that? He said, "Well, when I was in training, Miss Stevenson said that every Montessori kid was 2 or 3 years ahead of grade level." So again, you got to help your teachers to know what to say and what not to say. One of the most common examples is, I think your child might be autistic, or I think your child might have a learning disability or might have ADHD. They are not qualified to diagnose. And so we got to be careful about what they say and what they don't say, especially if they gossip. So parents generally worry. They worry when there's no good reason. They worry all the time. They worry that Montessori is not really doing the right thing for their child, that their kid isn't going to make it in public kindergarten or in 1st grade or whatever. and that they're going to have to say to their mother-in-law, "You were right. I should have never sent him to that monastery school. Um, you know, I'm so embarrassed that I did that." And so they worry. And what we've got to do is help them to bring their concerns up into the open, ideally not in a way that makes every other parent go panicking. We want to communicate that there is real academic progress and it needs to be honest, accurate information. We got to help them to have realistic understanding. Like 2-year-olds don't normally read. It's not usually going to happen. This is what really goes on in kindergarten. The average parent has no clue. And we also have to help them understand why we use older kids to work with younger kids. That this is not a bad thing, that both sides are getting something out of that relationship. We want to create connection with our families, not distance. So again, there is a communication gap in most schools, in part because parents, again, don't read their email. These days, you're much more likely to get someone to pay attention to you if you send them a text than if you send them an email, but only if they want to get it, only if they find it useful. I mean, we all get email that we enjoy, and when we see it, we read it. On the other hand, I mean, you probably get 3 emails from me a day, and maybe you read it, maybe you don't. We try to only give you information that we think you would actually want to know, but it's tricky. And so, what you're trying to do is to communicate in a reasonable way with people who actually want to hear what you're trying to share. The other problem is we've got teachers who are not necessarily good writers, they're not necessarily good speakers, and they definitely may not be computer savvy. And so we're trying to figure out how do we help them to do a good job and to make the time and effort to get this done. Again, I was at a really interesting workshop in May, excuse me, it was April, end of April at Barry. Uh, and Lisa Reiner, who's a very dear friend of mine, was introduced to Illumine, which is a software company I consult for. And Illumine's interesting if you're interested in a school management solution that is easier to use and less expensive than fax. But she looked at this thing and she said, wow, I use Transparent Classroom now, and it takes me all Sunday to take all the pictures I've taken during the week and tag them and send them out to the parents. With Illumine, it knows who they are and it just does it every day automatically, and it creates a whole narrative. You've just saved me 1 day a week. Now, that's an extreme example, but when you start seeing what AI can do to speed up your work, it's really shocking. Again, you still need to have a human looking at it so it doesn't tell them something is crazy, but it is absolutely shocking what computers can do today to make teachers' lives easier. And I'm very excited when I see the kinds of things that the smartest programmers are beginning to do. By the way, I love Transparent Classroom. I love Montessori Compass, and I'm a big fan of Compass, as you may or may not know. But I also appreciate how expensive it is for them to do an upgrade. I know what it just costs to do Compass 2.0. What I'm interested in is I'm seeing these young Turks coming out of the Silicon Valleys of India who are really good programmers. They're really inexpensive and they're really fast. And they're producing solutions that are scary good. So again, keep your eyes on the ball and watch what's coming down the pike, because there's some great solutions that can make our lives easier in the office and make our teachers' lives easier in the classroom. So families tend to drift away and they don't necessarily leave in a huff. Usually it's just a quiet, you know, John won't be coming back next year or next term or next tomorrow. Um, and they give you all kinds of reasons for it. So again, we're just trying to figure out how do we minimize the chance that this will happen. So everything I'm talking about today, again, has to be done as a system. There has to be a plan to make it continuous, not one big day a year, not 1 week a year, not the first 3 months of the year. You got to be Some of you can think back to your years in university. On campus, probably every night, there might have been 5 to 10 things going on. Clubs that were meeting, lectures that were going on, films that were being shown, all kinds of stuff. And you, of course, as an individual student, you went to something that appealed to you or you ignored it. Parents are like that. And that's the way I think a school's got to do it. You can't come up with one size fits all because some people are going to be great with the written word. Some people love movies. Some people love to go to your school, especially if there's food involved. Some people love it when their kids are doing a demonstration night. Uh, some people love it when there's a parent conversation, but they hate it when you're lecturing them. Other people want to take a class. Some people's biggest draw is help me figure out how to get my kid to do what I want him to do. Other people are in a sensitive period for interior home design. They want to know how do I create the perfect Montessori environment in my child's bedroom. By the way, that's something that uh, Abigail, my trained assistant, does this inside of the Montessori Family Alliance. It literally will help you design your entire home uh, and literally create a drawing or picture, artificial picture of what it could look like. It's pretty exciting. The second thing is you want collaboration. Ideally, parents like working together if they feel again safe. They're not, there's no test. They're not going to be ashamed because they're not the ideal Montessori groupie. They love it when they can just sit down and chat with other parents, get to know the teachers as people, and just let their hair down and talk about ain't it awful raising kids in today's world. They like that kind of thing. They love it when you help them solve problems, babysitting, you know, parents' night out when you take care of the kid until 9 o'clock at night so they can go to dinner or go to a movie. They love it. Um, Saturday school, a lot of schools are beginning to do that again. So the parents can go shopping and they know their kids are being cared for. Year-round school is another issue you may want to look at. Anyway, consistent communication, much, much more frequently than most schools do. My experience is a typical school today is creating a PDF newsletter and sending it once a month as an email attachment to their families. This is not a solution. I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but that is not what I have in mind. Can you all hear the dogs barking? I've got two dogs I'm sitting at my dining room table and I got dogs barking at my wife who's just come in. Hopefully they will be quiet. Thank you, dear. All right. So again, as I've said before, different families need different kinds of experiences, and you want to, just as we have a prepared environment for children, we want to create a prepared, we'll call it a parent education or parent engagement environment for parents, so that you have different solutions that appeal to different personality types. Now, one teacher is not going to do all these different things. In fact, I think you're lucky if you can get any teacher to do anything. So what we're trying to do is figure out whose problem is this anyway? What can we do to try to get people to do what we want? And probably the person who most wants these families to be engaged, happy, supportive, and stay is you. That doesn't mean you're the only person to do this, but I think it's important that we don't just wring our hands and say, I can't get teachers to do what I want them to do. I think what we need to do is figure out what can we do to solve this problem. Again, it's about engineering systems. So we need very personalized solutions. I would argue you need a partner, and there are several ways to get partners. One way is to have Steve Hughes come to your school for a week and do parent ed, or to have Chip DeLorenzo or Jane Nelson do the, positive discipline course. Very, very expensive, but it works. There's no question. Those people have Tim Selden, Paul Epstein, Simone Davis, really famous, appealing people come to your school. It tends to work. On the other hand, doing it once a year isn't enough. So you have to do it often enough that, like a massage is great, but a week later you need another massage. So you got to keep the cycle going. That's one of the reasons why we again urge you take a look at the Montessori Family Alliance. You may discover that what we've got going on there, and you might call it an app, it's really a website, but I think you may find that it's just sexy enough that it won't solve your problems, but it sure may be a good partner. So partnering, and in my experience with my own school was I did it all. I mean, we had immersion experiences, we had parent nights, we had the student demonstration nights, we had fairs, we had potluck dinners, we had square dances, we had Steve Hughes would come and Paul would come and John Wolfe would come and Kathy Leach would come. We did all kinds of stuff, monthly community meetings. It never hurts. The more you throw at this, the more likely you are to win. So we would argue you want to do parent education before the family starts your school. And the way you do that, if you choose to do it, and I'm sorry, I see this slide is a little off center, is you have a class, which you could do online or you could do in person. You could do it at the city library or something like that, called something like, Is Montessori right for me? Or is it right for my child? And essentially, you take an hour and you help them to understand what Montessori is like. And instead of just talking about prepared environments and didactic materials and who Maria Montessori was, who they really don't care. That's not what they want to know. What they want to know is what's in it for me? If I go to Montessori, how are you going to make my life better? And doing that as a story is the most likely to win friends and influence neighbors. So finding a way to help people to see how you're going to make their life better right from the start and recognizing right from the beginning that not everyone is going to feel that what you have to offer is what they want. So if instead of trying to convert everyone you meet, if instead you say, look, what I'm trying to do is find a few people for whom this is the perfect solution, who are going to appreciate us and be our partners. And if it's you, we want to know you. Come on down. If it's not you, it's okay. We want to help you find the perfect match for you. People appreciate that kind of transparency and honesty. By the way, I'm just rambling on here. Does anyone have anything you want to ask or say? Because please unmute or put it in the chat, and my friend Sharon will read the chat and tell me what you said.
I have a question for you.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Sinceria. I'm out of Nashville, and I have a small Montessori school here. And I'm noticing that part of our challenge when you talk about retention is competing with going to the middle school level. Now we go up to sixth grade in order to complete the 3-year cycle in upper L, but we have students that leave at fifth grade because it's easier for the parents to get into public middle school so that they can continue on to the high school levels. And so, do you have any advice on how to um, kind of help with that? We have families that stay because they understand the philosophy, but we do have families that are thinking about long term. And to your point, they may want us to go up to high school, but realistically, when you look at the numbers, it doesn't make financial sense for the school to do that. So, do you have any advice?
Couple of things. First off, what school is yours? I do a lot of work in Nashville.
Yeah, Nia House Montessori School.
Oh, you're near house. Okay.
Yeah.
You may know that I've done a lot of work with the Academy and with Austin Pressler at Montessori One and Mount Juliet.
Yeah.
Um, I've heard wonderful things about your school.
Thank you.
You You may want to give me a call. You may want to talk it through.
Okay.
Um, I'll put my number in the chat before we end the meeting. But the bottom line is there is no perfect solution. My best guess, you probably ought to ultimately go up to middle school. One way to do that in the early years when you don't really have enough children that want it is to maybe look at partnering with something like the Bridgemont School. Have you heard about them?
No, I haven't.
So, Bridgemont International Montessori School is an online Montessori middle and high school. And a lot of the Montessori schools that I know that are sort of emerging up into those early years, they partner with Bridgemont because they don't have enough students and enough money to be able to do everything. So I don't want to take everyone's time with this, but we can certainly introduce you to them. You can just take a look and see if down the road that might not be a part of your solution. However, the good news is you've got people nagging, and typically this what you're describing is the way it works. At the beginning, it's too expensive. You can't justify it, and you got to figure out, do I just keep losing these kids at fifth grade, or is there a solution? And so there's no one answer, but I'd be happy to try to help you figure out what might work for you.
Awesome. Thank you.
You bet. Anyone else? All right, not hearing anyone else jumping in. It's okay. Let's go on. So, first 90 days of school, and I would argue all through the summer too, but the first 90 real days of classes, you want to obviously, you're going to start with a series of welcoming experiences. This is the first year they're in your school. So, I would argue, in fact, some of you may have attended our workshops on the new parent onboarding playbook. And if you didn't attend it, you can go to our YouTube video page for the Montessori Foundation. The recording is there. If you were signed up for the series, we probably sent that to you already. But we have a whole playbook that literally, if you write me, if you don't have it, and you want a copy of the actual playbook, essentially a playbook is a set of swipe files, emails, and suggestions of what you can do. And you just basically turn our example into your example. What do you want to do at your individual school? Again, everything has to be done by plan. You can't make it up as you go along. So you want it to all be worked out in advance. If you're part of the Montessori Growth Suite, or if you're part of what we call the Enrollment Accelerator program through the foundation, all of this can be automated. We can fire it out to your parents, without you having to do a darn thing. The bottom line is anyone can do it. You don't even need a MailChimp or Robly or Constant Contact. You just do it with your own email. The bottom line is you're trying to reach out and form a loving relationship with people right from the start, before they actually get into school. Now, all the things you need to be thinking about, helping your kid to get ready for school, you know, books about the first day at school that you might want to read to your child, you know, getting a good night's sleep, all the things you want them to know depending on their age level. So, this kind of thing, which includes things like new parent orientation, by the way, a piece of advice: the typical first night of school, whatever you call back to school meeting, is done with parents sitting in little chairs, chairs meant for little butts, and they're adults sitting in these little kid chairs under fluorescent lights in your classroom. And they have paid for a babysitter. Maybe you provided free childcare and they're hoping their kid's okay. And they're sitting there. Your teacher is in the front of the room. The assistant is probably beside her, not saying a word because she's only the assistant. Assistants are often treated like chopped liver. And your teacher has a clipboard, and on that clipboard is all the things she wants to cover that night. And she drones on and on and on. And the fathers are typically falling asleep or answering business emails, or they're watching videos. And the moms, and I know I'm being very, very sexist, but it's just who I am too old. Moms are probably paying attention and they're making frantic notes, or they're sitting there saying, "This is too stupid for words. I can't believe I'm listening to this. I need to be in my partner's meeting in my law firm." The bottom line is there's a better way to run that meeting. And the way to run it is put up on the board or on a set of white flip chart paper typical questions, or give people a piece of paper. This is the 50 questions that parents typically have when they start the year. This is what either you need to remember as a returning parent because you probably forgot it, or what you need to know as a brand new parent because no one ever told it to you. Yeah, it was all in the handbook, but you probably never read it, never understood, you didn't remember what's in there. These are the key things, like how do you drop kids off in the morning? What do you do if you show up at school and the school is still locked? Who do you call if this happens? Or what are we going to do if your kid's ever sick during the day? So instead of the teacher lecturing, the teacher says, these are the questions typically we ought to go over. Where do you want to start? And instead of answering, let's say Lydia says, how about the drop off? And I say, okay, that's great. Sharon, you're in your second year. Would you be willing to tell Lydia how that works? Can you let her know how drop off works? This keeps people on their toes and it changes the whole dynamic of the evening. You're not going to cover it all. People can only absorb maybe 5 pieces of information, most. So definitely think about what's most important and know that the average person needs to hear things at least 8 times before they even know you were talking to them. So don't be surprised when parents don't remember what you said to them yesterday. And then communicate with people in an appropriate way that they enjoy often and in a way that they understand. Just pay attention to what works, do what works more often, stop doing the stuff that doesn't work instead of just saying, why don't these parents read? The Montessori Family Alliance is intended to be your partner. It will not be delivering your personal e-news or whatever. It's meant to be a partner. It will be talking to them about, where does all the money go? What does it take to become a Montessori teacher? Help, my school just lost their trained Montessori teacher, and now there's someone without Montessori training. Is my child about to lose a year? And why they don't need to be afraid and how they can help. All the different things that go on. I mean, we've heard it all. My family started doing this in 1932. We have heard and seen everything. And I've worked as a consultant with more than 1,000 Montessori schools, public, charter, and private. And again, we've seen it all. You wouldn't believe all the stuff. So what we try to do is be the voice of reason that parents trust. The Montessori Navigator is Abigail. She is your personal guide through Montessori. And again, if you go in there and you see what she doesn't talk to you yet, and she does through writing, but she's pretty cool. It's very personalized. By the way, it's very, very confidential. You will never know what your parents are saying or being told. They will not be told crazy stuff, though, I will tell you that. We've set up really tight guide rules for Abigail. And it will be very much like calling the Montessori Foundation and hearing what we would say. It is HEPA compliant, so this stuff is isolated. One family's information is not going to get onto the internet and all that good stuff. So again, whatever you do, whatever we do together maybe, is intended to help parents to understand Montessori education and help them to feel Montessori versus conventional. Although, by the way, that list of comparisons that AMS has out there that every school seems to put on their website is boring. Parents complain to me all the time about it. So keep in mind, the average parent doesn't care. They don't care about conventional versus Montessori. They want to know, what will Montessori do for my child? Why should I care? How will this make my life better? That's what you're trying to get across. They don't care about why you're better than public school. They want to know, why are you better, period? What are you doing for them? Obviously, we're trying to embrace the idea of holistic growth, the emotional, psychological, spiritual side of children's education. Many of you are running schools that involve nature and gardening and animals and so forth, or celebration and cooking and international, intercultural immersion. This is all part of what makes Montessori really great all over the world. Helena has gone radio silent, but I'd love for her to talk to us one week about the Montessori Games program that her school participated in France. Her elementary and middle school kids were involved in a whole program that was supposed to be in Cyprus, but they did it at her school in Provence, France. And it's just basically kids from all kinds of schools. So those of you who are in Nashville, try to imagine, a day where all the kids in Nashville come together and have one big Montessori games or a celebration you know, in Washington, D.C., we used to do Passover we do a Seder on the mall. There are all kinds of things you can do. So again, we're trying to build community, emotional connections, and friendships among parents, and shared values, and a feeling that your teachers, and by the way, because again, your teachers are likely without intending it, but the parents often see you as the enemy. They see us as the enemy. We're the administrators. We don't care. We're not teaching the kids. We don't know. We're older, whatever. And quite often the parents pick up on this and they'll get the teachers and say, ain't it awful that you have to work for $5 a week in a tuna fish sandwich for this administrator? Maybe you and I should go start a school of our own, which is, by the way, how a lot of new schools get started. So again, what we're trying to do is create shared values, real relationship. And what we're trying to do is to help our teachers to understand that our parents are not the enemy, and that they got to watch out for the gaminess that can go on, but they have to understand that without those parents, they don't have any kids. So what we're trying to do is help them to understand how to have a real partnership with families. And by the way, this is one of the Montessori Foundation's most popular professional development talks for staff, is how to partner with your families if you're ever interested. So again, what we want to do is help people to identify key moments in family life. Some people call that a Montessori moment. We want to deliver communication with families consistently. We want to find incredible touch points that are meaningful. It's kind of like date night in a marriage. You have to make time to be together. We have to build memories, build family celebrations, and do a really good job of it. And we have to pay attention to feedback. What's working, what's not. So that's it for me. This is my phone number. By the way, on the screen, that is my cell phone number. There's a one in front of it if you're outside the United States and not in Canada. But that's my personal email, and that is my personal cell phone. I really do answer the phone. I really am busy, and if I'm busy, I will call you back. And as the old saying goes, the guardians of Israel never sleep or rest. For me, this is a labor of love. It's a passion. I believe very strongly in the work that you and I do, and we are here to help. So that's it for this week. Anyone have anything you want to say as we get ready to wrap up? Nope. Okay. Then I'll say goodnight, Gracie. Thank you. Thanks, Leslie. Appreciate it. And again, I'll send everyone a PDF of the PowerPoint. I'll send you an essay that I wrote, and I will send you the link to the recording when I've got it uploaded. Okay. We'll see you next week. Do remember, on Thursday we have our other weekly webinar. By the way, what we're talking about this week on Wednesday is strategic planning for Montessori schools and for non-Montessori schools, and will be different than the typical lecture on strategic planning. So if you're at all interested in that topic, please join us on Thursday or sign up and you'll get the same thing. You'll get the PowerPoint, you'll get the essay, and you'll get the movie. All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank
See you
you.
next week. Bye-bye.